get locked up. I'd ask him later, or if we ever got to speak face to face. I had too many questions to put in a simple letter. I'd barely been a year old when I'd been put into foster care, and as far as I'd known since then, I'd been normal. I'd kept the note brief in the end, not wanting to get into my history of losing jobs and drifting around and never fitting in anywhere. Fairy Falls was the closest I'd felt to home, and I'd even messed that up when I'd neglected to tell the guy I was sort of seeing that I was half fairy, and then de-glamoured in front of half the town. "You look like you just slept in a coffin," said Alyssa, my flatmate, sipping coffee at the kitchen table when I walked in. Her cat Rolled lay curled around her feet, occasionally swatting at Sky when he got too close. Sprawled under the table, Sky looked non-threatening, a little black cat with one white paw and one grey and one blue eye. But his other form was a terrifying beast. When I'd adopted Sky, or rather, he'd adopted me, everyone had assumed he was a witch's familiar and had picked me for that reason. Instead, he'd turned out to be a fairy cat who could shapeshift, walk through walls, and pick up on the psychic projections of vampires. Oh, and turn into a giant furry monster. And I wondered why I could never get used to this new normal. "Most vampires look more alert than I do," I said, walking to the kitchen counter. "Apparently, immortality means being able to sleep in coffins without waking up with horrible back pain." "Most vampires line their coffins with cushions," she said. "Not that it sounds fun either way. What if you forget about the coffin lid and hit your head in the middle of the night?" "Exactly." Since Alyssa had been sort of dating a vampire until recently, she'd known all about the downsides. That's why I'd make a terrible vampire. Not that I'm a great fairy, either. I clamped my mouth shut before I started listing all my woes. Act normal, remember? Alyssa gave me a concerned look as I brought my mug of the caffeinated witchy brew to the table. "Are you okay, Blair?" "What did my fairy form actually look like?" I blurted. "It's not like there were any mirrors around when we were running for our lives." She blinked. "Winged, shiny, otherwise basically like you. Why?" I shook my head. The way everyone stared, it was like I'd turned into an elf or something. "Oh no," she said. "The elves are barely related to you. Really, don't worry about it. Everyone will have forgotten soon." I sincerely doubted they'd forgotten my public performance that easily. "I hope it's a calm day at the office." I'd been allowed a few days off to recover from my latest ordeal, in this case being the prisoner of a mad wizard in his ancestor's house. But at least my co-workers already knew I was half fairy. That would make things easier. And let's face it, they'd seen me screw up before. I'd once accidentally turned myself transparent for 2 full days when I'd tried to make an invisibility potion. "Do you have a magic lesson later?" Alyssa asked. I took a long sip of coffee. "Yep, I'm going to beg Rita to keep me in individual classes for now, but to start at a higher level. Mostly so I stop accidentally creating spontaneous glitter balls." Let's just say I'd had a little trouble learning to use my wand, at least until I'd figured out that I was actually left wand-handed and not right-handed like I was with everything else. Even then, my magic was erratic, reacted in response to emotions without conscious thought, and generally didn't behave in the way it was supposed to. She snorted. "You're not wrong. If it's any consolation, you have a ton of raw talent, but you just haven't learned to control it in the right way." "Is Madame Grey going to be there?" I asked. I know she's still busy dealing with complaints from the werewolves and the vampires, but I wanted to talk to her. "If she has any sense, she's run off," Alyssa said. "They won't give her a moment's peace." "What, did you want to talk about your magical training with her, or?" I sipped my coffee, twisting my hands around the mug.